Hello, I'm Robert, and I'm the founder and admin for Doomsday Debunked on Facebook, where we help people who are absolutely terrified by various stories, such as, in this case, a claim that an asteroid is about to hit Earth. And if someone shows this to you, I'm doing this for psychologists and psychiatrists and other health professionals. If someone shows this video to you, then it feels they haven't been able to, it means they feel they haven't been able to communicate quite how scared they are by these stories. And by scared, I mean absolutely terrified. So, for example, one person I've helped, then he was held up by armed robbers in a rough area of his city, and he's a pretty and brave, stable kind of person, and he wasn't psychologically affected by that. He didn't get post-traumatic stress disorder for that, but he got a huge amount of trauma from some of these stories that he read, and tentatively he perhaps has post-traumatic stress disorder, and quite a few of the members of the group do have PTSD and diagnosed, which they got entirely from reading these stories. They are that traumatic. So I'm not saying what your diagnosis should be, but I'm just saying I want to convey how stressful and traumatic these stories are just from reading it. And before that, their life was absolutely just normal like anyone else's. They read the story and then wham, they're then in this area of absolute fear. And for instance, on the NASA asteroid warnings, then we have people we help who are afraid to leave their house, who were students and they had to take a semester off from their studies because they're so scared of the asteroids. And they come to believe, what they do is they Google on Google News. And I think that Google should have a fact check. This is just a mock-up of how I think they should do it. They should have a fact check on these stories to say that NASA has never issued any asteroid warning or alert to date. But this is what Google News says. Asteroid alert, NASA reveals nature, and NASA asteroid warning, asteroid alert. Most of these are from the Daily Express. And it's a UK red top tabloid, and although they are reasonable on sport, they would never, and on public events, they would never run a story saying the Queen has died when she hasn't, or saying that the UK has won a major sports event when they haven't, and yet they run these numerous fake stories saying that an asteroid is about to hit Earth and kill everyone. And they are known in the UK, they're well known in the UK for just making stuff up. They're equivalent to the yellow press in the US for this kind of story. But these people don't know it. So what we can do is we can help them with a basic fact check. We know where to go and how to check these things properly. They don't, and it's very difficult to fact check these stories when there's so much fake news on the internet. But what they need with therapy is they need help with dealing with the extreme trauma that these stories have caused them. And so there's a number of other ones like this. So some of the things that they share with you may seem basically scientific, and they are. That is, the idea of an asteroid is scientific. What is not true is that a big asteroid is about to hit Earth. Then others, they may tell you that the sun is suddenly going to get much brighter and become 100 times brighter, and everyone will die. This is actually based on an actual scientific story that was never really thought to apply to Earth, but they found super flares where they got much brighter from 400 sun-like stars, and some of these got 100 times brighter suddenly, and that would be absolutely devastating. Now, we always knew that this could not happen to the Earth, or at least has not happened for billions of years, because if it had, then the rocks on the moon would have melted, and the ice of Jupiter's moons would have melted, and this has not happened. So it's obvious we have never had a super flare for billions of years. And then the question was, could we have one in the future? It's obviously amazingly unlikely. Well, eventually they discovered that our sun is the wrong kind of sun to have these super flares. However, you still get these stories saying that a solar super flares could a super flare happen on our sun, and you get especially the Sun saying that the sun is a red top tabloid like the asteroid stories, saying the sun could unleash a massive super flare. And there's a movie called The Knowing, which is not actually about super flares. It's totally sort of made up pseudo nonsensical science. But people read that and then they go and find these stories and they get scared that the sun's going to get brighter. So this is not in any way delusive. They believe it because they think it's science, and it actually was based on science, never really thought to apply to our Earth, and eventually shown that it's not possible for our Earth. We can get super flares at about a tenth of the total output of the sun, about the same as the total output of the sun for a tenth of a second. That's the maximum amount of energy from a solar flare. So when they say super flares, talking about still being super flares, then that's usually about that sort of thing. And then some of this is just not true at all. You get some just out of date stuff, or stuff it's really sadly rather common to have a lot of news that is just not true. Again, we can help with fact checking that, but they need help with the trauma as well, and the extreme fear and so on. Now, some of the things other things, well, you will probably get people. So I'll tell you about the you get these World War III scares recently. This was never at any point considered by kind of, if you know where to look, if you know how to fact check it properly, and the responsible and the careful, the people like retired admirals and so on, and what they're saying, there's no chance at all of even a major war. Is extraordinarily unlikely, and there was never really a chance. And World War III, absolutely impossible, and no possibility of the draft. But it's not easy to do that fact checking, and people got very scared, mainly by these hilarious virus memes, but by people who never check anything. And then so the social pressure is an awful lot of reason why they get so scared. Now, these things I've said so far, and another thing is climate change and the Extinction Rebellion's absolutely bizarre exaggerations, where they say that billions of people are going to die, and this is not true at all. And if you, I've done a separate video about that. If you check with the IPCC, they don't say that. And this was Andrew Neil, a demolished Extinction Rebellion spokesman, and he's a hard-hitting interviewer. He didn't know much about climate science, but he had read probably the summary for policymakers for the IPCC report. He just asked her, where in this report does it say that billions of people are going to die, and she had nothing to say in response. And so a lot of people are scared of the Extinction Rebellion's very extreme statements, which are just not true at all, not based on science. So again, fact checking is the thing, but we in Doomsday Debunk can help with the fact checking, because there's so much absolutely wrong. So I've got the worst fact check, some of the worst, lots of mistakes in the and actually seriously wrong articles in the press. So you need to encourage them to fact check, and we could help in Doomsday Debunks, and because it's quite difficult to fact check when you have even the likes of National Geographic saying things that are just completely wrong. They get this idea about deadly heat waves, where 75% of people could face deadly heat waves, and it turns out that they're summarising a paper which is talking about heat waves like the ones that 30% of the world have already, and obviously 30% of the world isn't dying. So for these ones, which are based basically on science, but it's because the media, they've just gone crazy on climate change for the last year, and so it's not your patient's problem, it is actually people being just very exaggerating and saying bizarre things that they then believe. Now, some of the things that they believe actually might seem to be absolutely nuts, and you want to I can well understand very occasionally some of the people we help are diagnosed as having psychosis. And there are two reasons. So one would be that they believe these things that seem absolutely utter nuts, and you just think, how could someone think such a thing? And the reason is social pressure and people external. So the people, the chap who actually brought up this idea, for instance, David Montan, I mean, he may have some problem, some kind of psychosis issue of some sort, but he seems very convincing, like he believes what he says, and he convinces these other people. And he convinced them, for instance, the 21st of December last year, that the Earth's crust would slip all the way around, and that people in the Northern Hemisphere would find themselves suddenly in the Southern Hemisphere. There'd be lots of earthquakes, and all sorts of horrible things would happen, ending at the end of the week with Jesus returning, and 1 billion people going up into the sky, which is something, and the rest being left to absolutely horrific situation on Earth. And this is for people with a certain, not very strong background in science, and who have quite strong religious beliefs in Jesus, and who don't have very strong background in theology. Then they believed this. They just thought it was correct. They thought this was actually going to happen. And you can imagine if you believed that was going to happen, you'd be very scared. And it's not true. There's absolutely no truth to it at all. The continental crust, we know, can't slip. Anyway, I've got a detailed debunk there, and I explain how with GPS we can see how the crust is moving slowly, very, very slowly, centimeters a year. And it doesn't suddenly slip. It's out-of-date science from nearly a century ago. So again, we can help with the fact-checking, but these people are extremely scared, and it may seem like a psychosis, it is not. And finally, this is an absolutely bonkers one, and they believe this through, again, similarly, this would seem like paranoia as well, and it's not. Again, the author of these videos may well be paranoid, who knows, but not the people that we're helping. They're just ordinary folk, and very few of them have much background in any of this. They just believe it because they think it's right. They think it's true. They think he speaks in a very authoritative way on YouTube. Many of them naively believe that videos on YouTube are authoritative. Many believe that Google News is authoritative, and then because you get such strange sounding things from science, I think that may be part of it. They come to actually believe the craziest things. So the claim here was that the Freemasons, which of course are mainly white and live north of the equator, many of us will know, have a secret plan to, and then collaboration with a world government of the entire government, with a single monarch, who secret monarch that nobody knows about, who governs everybody, and they are going to use a heat ray developed by the United States to kill all white people but not coloured people north of the equator. I mean, I can well understand that a therapist listening to someone telling them all that would think that they have deep psychosis and extreme paranoia, when it's not that at all. All their friends are telling them that on social media, and they realise it's a bonkers idea, but then they think, but they don't have a lot of self-confidence, and they think, it's so crazy that could it be true, although it's crazy. And that is the sort of, and because they're so panicking, they're not thinking clearly. So these are not paranoid people, they're not psychosis. At least, of course, I'm not saying nobody you meet who's scared is going to be paranoid, but I'm just saying, please don't confuse people who are believing a paranoid or psychotic thing that someone else has made and that they read on the internet that they believe, for someone who is themselves either psychotic or paranoid. They're just terrified and not thinking clearly, most of the people we help. And they're generally diagnosed with things like PTSD. And yes, say climate change, again, they believe these things. You would think National Geographic, even like a professor that I help, who believes this because they used to believe it before I helped her with the fact-checking and showing what the actual paper said. And you just naturally believe your National Geographic. Surely they wouldn't say something like that if it wasn't true. Surely if the National Geographic say this, then it must be true that 75% of the world risks dying in a heat wave. And unless you go and read the paper behind, the paper itself talks about deadly heat, you have to look at it quite carefully before you actually realise that they're not telling it right at all. It's just being totally misleading. So that is what I want to say. And the main people who are affected seem to be, I've got this to quarter of an hour, so the main people who are affected seem to be people with OCD, autistic, or highly imaginative and empathic. This is anecdotal, and we haven't done a proper survey, but a huge number of people with those various are members of our group. Think about a quarter of our group are autistic, for instance, and then the other ones are the ones who are very imaginative and empathic, and they visualize these scenarios, and often artistic types. Sorry, I didn't mean to press that. And susceptible, and people are very susceptible to social pressure, or who don't have very much by way of a social group around them, or they may have a social group that reinforces these things, because many of these things appear on TV and so on, and on the like of the History Channel, for instance, which is no longer really about history, or Coast to Coast FM, or they read it about on the Daily Express, and they don't realise how unreliable their sources are. So anyway, we can help with the fact-checking. If they get the correct diagnosis, then the therapists help them a lot. If they get the wrong diagnosis, then sadly they often get worse as a result of therapy. And if someone is sharing this with you, then it's probably because they feel that you're not taking them seriously, and you're treating it too light, and that makes them be much more scared. If they feel that even their therapist is not listening to them, and then they get given treatments to do, for instance, asked to go deeply into the thing that scares them, and that's like asking someone with PTSD to go deeply into whatever the thing is that scares them, and they have the problems of triggers and flashbacks, and it just needs a different kind of treatment, and they also have problems with obsessive thoughts, and that is generally an important issue with them. Anyway, I will have to stop now. It's getting quite long, 18 minutes, and anyway, hopefully this helps you to give the correct diagnosis. Then once you've got the correct diagnosis, I know from experience with the group that there are many excellent tools that therapists have available to help the people who are with this extreme anxiety and fear and trauma, and so it's just a matter of getting the right diagnosis, and after that then the treatment does work and goes very well. And for the people who help us, then they often have some of them, as I said, are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it seems to be very treatable, and within a few within days to weeks, then they're significantly better, and they can be just about over it within months. For most people we help, it's much worse. We sometimes have people we help who've been scared of these stories since they were a young child. Nowadays, the people who've been children, who were young children at the time of the 2012 story, which scared so many people, and of course that must be a hard thing to treat. But again, you get significant improvement for everyone once they get the right treatment, and very, very quickly. And so that's also a word for help for the people word of encouragement for the people who will be helping the group. So anyway, that's it. I hope this helps to get the right treatment and therapy for more of our members. and and just reminds for anyone who watches this video, then I'm going to make it public in the group. I haven't named anybody, so there's nothing private about this. I'll make it public in my YouTube channel, and if you are yourselves scared of any of these scenarios, do join our group Facebook Debunked, and I will add a link to it in the description on Facebook if you need help, or if you're able to help with debunking. And for that matter, if anybody watching this is a psychologist or a psychiatrist or therapist, then again they may well be able to help in the group in one way or another, and professional help in some way. And we welcome anybody who can help in our group and help these scared people. And thanks for listening.